All right, good afternoon, everyone. Today is on Tuesday, September 16th. This is the meeting of the Caleb Wilson Hazing Prevention Task Force. I will ask Dr. Smith to please call the roll.
Rep. Jason Hughes.
Here.
Rep. Delisha Boyd. Rep. Joseph Stagney.
Here.
Rep. Vanessa LaFleur. Rep. John Weibel. Rep. Rashid Young. Rep. Timmy Chasson. Senator Gerald Boudreaux.
Present.
Senator Edward Price.
Here.
Senator Larry Selders. Senator Kirk Talbot. Julie Ralph.
Here.
Major Nicole Kilgore.
Here.
Dr. Kim Hunter-Reed. Pamela Williams. Brennan Bellinger. Connor Goodley. Naquavion Willis.
Here.
Dr. Amy Cable.
Present.
Dr. Francie Brown McClure.
Here.
Dr. Winton Anderson.
Here.
Alicia Mitchell.
Here.
Dr. Jim Carlson.
Here.
Trey Jones.
Here.
Corinne Blash.
Here.
Dr. Eric Clay.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much, Dr. Smith. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to all of the task force members for being here today, and thank you for members of the public, members of the audience that are joining us today. I know earlier today, members of the Wilson family were here. I know Miss Urena was here and still here. And I also know that one of Caleb's siblings, who was unable to join us at the last meeting, is here at this meeting. I don't know if the Wilson family would like to say anything, but you're welcome to come at this time. And if not, we certainly want to thank you for your presence here today. Vice Chair Boudreaux, I don't know if you have any opening comments, so I'll yield to Vice Chair Boudreaux, and then I will yield to our Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly want to thank Dr. Reed, her staff, and the team here at Pennington for the prep for today's earlier session, and then for accommodating us for our meeting this evening. I know when you switch venues, it's not something that comes easy, but I wanted to acknowledge and express our gratitude on behalf of the committee for the work of Dr. Reed and the entire team, and of course the team here at Pennington.
Thank you, Vice Chair Boudreaux. At this time, I will yield to our Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Delighted to see all of you with us for the second Caleb Wilson Hazing Prevention Task Force. Thanks to those of you who were able to come for the summit prior to this task force meeting. I think it was a significant conversation, a sobering conversation, but it, I think, sets the tone for the weight of what we need to get done and the seriousness of what we need to do and the urgency. So, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the opportunity to always be with you and do this work. Looking forward to the conversation today, and really grateful to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. Members, next item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from our first meeting. Members, you received those electronically, and there should also be a copy in your packet. Does any task force member have any questions regarding the minutes? Any task force members have any corrections? If not, Senator Price moves approval of the minutes, second by Representative Stagney. Is there any objection? Without objection, the minutes will be approved. Next, task force members, we're going to yield to our student representatives that are present, and just invite them to give any reflections that they have from today's summit. Some of the most powerful voices that we have a part of this task force are our student voices, and they possess a lot of power to bring meaningful change to their campuses. So with that, I'll start with our student reps that are here. Is Ms. Williams here? Okay. I don't think Brennan is here. Connor, I don't think is here. I think Naquavion is here.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to share any thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I found today very much of a phenomenal experience, just being in a room with all of our leaders and fighting against the ongoing and persisting practices of hazing is something that I think that we should truly consider doing more commonly, because for me especially, it provided me with more insight and wisdom on how I can go back to my campus and employ these traditions of providing a culture where there is safety, security, and support. So I very much just want to extend my thanks and gratification for that. But with that being said, I yield back, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willis. And let me just say on behalf of myself, Vice Chair Boudreaux, Commissioner of Higher Education, and all of the members of the task force, as you go back to your respective campus and your respective system, we know leadership can sometimes be lonely. Just know that everyone around this table, we have your back. And I'm saying that publicly, and I really mean that sincerely. Get our cell phone numbers, lean on us. This is partnership every step of the way. So thank you, Mr. Willis, for being here today. At this time, we are really excited to have a expert leader in the field of higher education, expert regarding hazing, former president of Dillard University in the great city of New Orleans. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Walter Kimbrough, who we all heard from earlier today at the summit, but really glad that he stayed today. And so, Mr. President, really great to see you here today, and we'll yield to you at this time.
Well, thank you. You know, what I want to do in the time that I have, I'm about to catch a flight back to Atlanta, where my office is with UNCF, even though I still live in New Orleans. So I'm here a couple times a month. My son is a junior at St. Aug's, so I got to get home. You know, to check on him every now and then. Like this past weekend, he didn't cut the grass. I don't understand what's happening. But I'll just turn it over to you to see what kind of questions that you all might have as a follow-up, just anything or thoughts that you have that you want to reflect on. As I indicated, to prepare for today, I watched the first meeting that you had, so I'd have some context in terms of how you were wrestling with some of the issues. But just would like to hear from you and see if I can reflect on anything that you have for the time I have. I have to dip out in about 15 minutes, so. But I'm going to turn it over to you, so, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Stagney is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was impressed with your presentation, and you talked about extended adolescence.
Yeah.
You know, those young men or women who have graduated already and are coming back to campus. Does your research show that those individuals commit maybe more incidents or problems than the on-campus student?
So what I've seen, I really started to notice this maybe about 10 or 15 years ago. And it was always in context of cases where there were arrests made and they indicated the ages of the people arrested. And I started to see mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. One of the slides I show, Francis Marion University had a situation where you had a 34-year-old where they were doing the hazing at his house. And of course, he's not a student. I mean, he could be a non-traditional student, but he's a teacher. He's not there. And so I'm really interested when I see cases where there are arrests that are being made, what those ages are. The challenge with that group is that for most of us, they might be almost invisible, that you don't really pay attention to those folks because there are some of your younger alums, even though we heard stories today, you do have older alums who push some of those traditions along. My career started at Emory University, where I was coordinator Greek life. And we wrestled with those alums on a lot of things because you had alums who would say, these buildings with these names on them, these are our alums at Emory. So they're flexing the might of the wealth of the alumni base for those groups. So how dare you try to close a chapter? But I started to notice that. And so that becomes a challenge for us in terms of we can deal with the group that's on campus and work with those students, but then what do you do with the people who are on the fringes? I mean, same thing I've seen as a part of some band hazing cases as well, because band culture is also very strong, and you'll have folks who will come back and they will be a part of that as well. So you can see that many places. So I don't have an exact percentage, as we were talking about it earlier. I would say, particularly when there are severe injuries, at least 2/3 of those cases, you're going to see somebody in that age range that's there. And for some of them, you know, I always say these are the folks that, you know, if I do a presentation for students, I'll say these people are on campus more than I am when I was a president. They're always helping out. I know it's a problem when it's time for students to move in and they're the ones helping the freshman girls move on campus. It's like, there they are, you better watch them. because that lets you know these are the folks that will be engaged in some other activities. So it's just something that I think we have to really start paying attention to, because they operate outside of our normal structure. Then to layer on top of that, particularly with some of our IFC groups, we're seeing this move for them to say, I'm just moving off campus and I'm going to operate outside of the rules of the organization. And if you have a problem with what's going on, I'll just deal with local law enforcement, but not your rules. So we're seeing that a lot of places. University of Michigan, West Virginia, Duke, Southern Cal, all of those places in the last 5 years have created Southern Cal, I can't think of what they call their like University Park IFC. And theirs was a response to a number of rapes that were reported on Fraternity Row, and they didn't like how the university was handling it. So they created their own IFC off campus. So that's a mentality we're dealing with. So that a little older group, but just operating in the shadows. And that makes it more difficult. But the first thing is to note that it's happening. And we need to be, vigilant and watching for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Stagney. Senator Price is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the discussion today, there was some issues about the culture and starting at such an early age. We're talking college now, but at that early age, K-12, have your studies have looked at anything at that level, and maybe something we can start from the legislative standpoint to doing something at that level?
Yeah, so I mean, the research that comes from stophazing.org, and they're actually doing the second version, the national study of I think it's focused on college, that will happen this coming spring. But part of their research says that really almost half of students come to college with some experience in hazing. So I think we have to partner this. There's been more conversation with middle schools to talk about bullying. And so I think we need to wrap all of those together. Bullying, hazing, excessive use of social media. There are a lot of things I think we can package together. So we need to work in concert with the state superintendents, with the high school athletic associations, actually even with professional sports. I think the Attorney General was saying, how do we get some people who have stature in our communities to talk about it? Can we get some PSAs from Saints players and Pelicans players to talk about those kinds of things? But we've got to start having those conversations earlier, because what I think our error has been over time. I chaired a task force in 2014 for the North American Interfraternity Conference, and that was a takeaway I had then, is that we're waiting too long to really engage in these conversations. So we've got to figure out, how do we start engaging middle and high school, that they are having regular conversations and trainings about hazing as well. Because it's almost too late when they come to college and they've sort of been accustomed to that culture, either through athletics, or in some places they have social clubs that operate like many fraternities and sororities that do some of the same things.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of the task force? President Kimbrough, let me ask you, obviously this task force, we're going to produce a comprehensive report in January with some legislative and policy recommendations. And we fully intend that this will not be a report that will sit on the shelf. We'll be tracking implementation thereafter. But as we work toward producing that report, are there any specific legislative or policy recommendations that you feel that this task force really needs to hone in on?
Well, as I was mentioning earlier, I think one that you could do, we've started talking about increasing the number of hours that students have in terms of training. But I think just in terms of comprehensive mandatory training for all students, that would include hazing, that we might, a lot of institutions are already doing some regular alcohol training, but you could do hazing, alcohol, intimate partner violence. I think there are a number of things, so it's not just the hazing piece, but I think these are things that people have to do every year, because I'm not aware of any state that has, or institution that's mandated that level of training. We focused on the hot spot groups. You're going to have the regular training for fraternities and sororities. People are doing more of that with athletes now. But as I was saying earlier, just for the entire campus to be aware would be helpful. It might even be a part of some either annual or semi-annual parts of training that we do for faculty and staff, so that they become, because we talk about them being responsible reporters when there is, some kind of assault on campus. it could be the same thing. What are the signs if you see hazing and those kind of behaviors? We never really, I'm thinking about this now, we really never think about faculty and staff being trained to talk about hazing as well. So just more touch points about what does this look like. So from a legislative standpoint, you could do some of that, but campuses can do that on their own. So you might even just develop, here are some mandatory things we want you to do, but here are a strong list of suggested activities that you participate in, and I would lean on some of those as well. I was having a conversation with the attorney from LSU years ago, back in the late 80s. University of Georgia did anonymous hazing hotline, and it wasn't abused. People are just worried that, oh, it's going to be abused, but Ron Bender, who started it then, he used it 3 other places. He never had a problem with that. So maybe that's something else we recommend, that we have hazing hotlines. So I think we should just try a number of different things to really get our hands on it. But, you know, we have to say, if we've had 2 high-profile deaths in a decade in this state, we got to do something a little bit different.
Absolutely.
But just think about this real quick. You mentioned something at the last meeting. You talked about if a chapter is removed from a campus, do they lose that chapter designation? That's a conversation I think you can have with the organization, because that really would be the best practice. If an organization eventually does come back, they don't come back with the legacy of whatever that chapter designation was. But the organization would, unless the institution mandates that, but that'll have to be the question, you know. So I'm thinking in my mind, what does expel mean? Is it expelled, mm-hmm. Or in 10 years somebody comes back and say, okay, they were expelled for that period of time, do they come? And I don't know what the answer is. Mm-hmm. But I think if the expulsion is only for a period of time, I agree with you. You have to wipe out that chapter from existence, and they have to start completely over. So I heard you say that a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to follow up on that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any final thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
You know, with power-based violence, we started to see like an uptick of reporting because you involve your faculty and staff. Yeah. And so I do think that there could be a correlation between our hazing reporting if we start to involve those other individuals, because they do know what signs to look for. And it's a matter of us investigating a proposed hazing incident, right? So we figure out what that evidence looks like. We track those cases just like we do with power-based violence, and then we can decide to dismiss the case or not dismiss the case. But then we have kind of just a better mechanism to track any type of reporting that's coming in on those incidences.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly in recent years, people have said they feel like there are more hazing cases, and I think because there is more awareness, there are more people reporting it. So I don't think we can have enough awareness. Like I said, you could do PSAs at football games and, you know, CBS shows, SEC games, and maybe there's a partnership that we could work with the SEC, with CBS, to say we want you to run, you know, anti-hazing PSAs and use athletes. These are just some new things we have to do to continue to get the word out so people are aware. And when they see these things, they say, oh, that doesn't look quite right. I think the DA made a good point too, which is a challenge, which I was excited to hear about the proposed convening next summer, because local law enforcement, sometimes I've watched cases, they don't really understand if it's hazing or not, and they get a lot of the facts wrong, and then it's normally a botched case. So I think to have partnerships with local law enforcement and campus people are very important, particularly because, and particularly in Caleb's case, people go off campus because they know there are more eyes. When I was vice president for student affairs at Albany State in Georgia, we had a member of a sorority who gave us a tip to say, I don't know where they're doing it, but on Friday night, they're gonna haze the line. And so the chief of police and I, at like 11 o'clock, went riding around Albany, Georgia, which is not that big. We rode around for 2 hours looking for those girls. And we found out the next week, they were in a barn 5 counties away. I'm not gonna find that. It's just no way in the world. I mean, I was excited. I was thinking like, man, I'm gonna tell great stories going forward about the time I walked in some people hazing, and you know, I was excited. We rode around Albany for 2 hours to only find out they were in a barn 5 counties away. Wow. So that's why we've got to get local law enforcement to be knowledgeable. So what he announced, I think, is absolutely, it'll be a great win for the state to have that kind of convening. So anything that, from a legislative perspective, you can help support that and help them do that, that would be awesome.
Well, Dr. Kimbrough, we really appreciate you being here and really reinforcing, look, the bottom line is here in the state of Louisiana, after yet another preventable death, we have to do things differently. And there's some things that we may be able to learn from other states, and there's just some things we're going to have to be the leader on where other states can look to us and learn from us. So we appreciate you reinforcing that and your partnership, and I'm sure we'll be leaning on you as we work to finalize our report.
Yep, absolutely. Anything I can do to be helpful, you know, please let me know. It is important, but I see this as an opportunity for this state to take the lead. There, like I said, Florida's done a couple things, Pennsylvania has, but because we've had the magnitude of the problem here, I think we need to take the lead. So I'm definitely excited about this work, and I want to thank all of you for committing your time and efforts to this. It's very important, so I want to thank you too.
Thank you, Dr. Kimbrough. Appreciate you, sir. Task force members, at this time, I want to just recap the accountability and action, the legal consequences for hazing in Louisiana. This session explored the legal consequences of hazing under Louisiana law, including both criminal charges and civil liability. This panel clearly cited the risk, penalties, responsibilities, and relevant state laws pertaining to hazing and student discipline that shape accountability on campus. We are joining us today is Attorney Morgan Johnson from D.A. Hiller Moore's office. And Representative LaFleur, thank you. I know she was having a conversation with Representative LaFleur, and then I joined that conversation toward the tail end. D.A. Johnson had the unfortunate reality of prosecuting the Max Groover case. And now the Caleb Wilson case. So I'm going to ask Attorney Johnson to come to the table because she made some points earlier today that I think could really help guide our work as we move forward and as we work toward our recommendations. DA, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I definitely didn't anticipate speaking today. However, I was asked to come to the summit today, and I feel like it's incumbent upon me, since I've been put in this position, to share with you what I've learned thank you. I was asked 8 years ago today to handle the Max Groover case. And I saw that case through, and fortunately we do have new law. We have the Max Groover Act. However, in 2017, as Hiller said, all we had was a misdemeanor hazing law on the books that was a $100 fine and approximately about 24 hours in prison. So we had to look beyond that and use other laws in this particular case. 10 young men were arrested for their involvement in Max's death. However, there was one person who was the main bad actor. He was indicted for negligent homicide. 3 others were indicted for misdemeanor hazing. However, in today's landscape with the Max Groover Act, we have a lot more options as prosecutors to go forward. And what's going to be interesting in Caleb's case, and I'm so glad the Wilson family's here today, is that we're going to be able to see this law in effect for the first time and see how it plays out. I'm limited with what I can say about Caleb's case because we do anticipate taking it to grand jury this fall. And we'll see how that plays out. But I do anticipate, because of that law, we're going to be able to hold more people accountable. And I loved the discussions today about accountability because I do think that is the first step in eradicating this behavior, is holding people accountable. So we're going to be able to use the Max Groover Act. And I also anticipate being able to hopefully use other laws to hold people accountable in Caleb's case. So again, I would love to report back after we're able to go to grand jury and give y'all some more feedback about that. However, one fortunate thing I've been able to do in the aftermath of Mac's death, and I want to thank Trey Jones for letting us do this, myself, LSU PD, and then also representatives from the Student Advocacy and Accountability Office with LSU have spoken to student organizations about Max's death, about hazing. And now, as recently this fall, we got to speak with student leaders about, and also Dean Brown McClure helped us out too this fall to speak to the student leaders at LSU in the Greek community about what this means. What does the hazing law, as we know it in Louisiana, what does it mean for you? And what has resonated with those students? And I unfortunately, I think I agree with Dr. Kimbrough. We're probably never going to eradicate hazing, but what can we do to prevent it? And what can we do to help it not have impacts on people with otherwise bright futures? What can we do? And I will say, from my experience, and I was in the Greek system, my husband was in the Greek system, I know the benefits that it has. However, from my experience in these hazing incidents, you have just a handful of bad actors, and they're not held accountable. And you have the leaders in those organizations who aren't doing what they need to do to hold them accountable and eradicate them from that group. And so what do those bad actors do? They cause bodily harm or death. And guess what? There's a ripple effect. All those young men or women, this follows them around for the rest of their life, for better or worse. So what we've tried to stress to these students is, do you want these bad actors, what they do, to be a scar on your life, on your reputation, on your permanent record? I thought Dr. Kimbrough hit a good point about, okay, bar exam, hazing. You're not going to be an attorney. The lady from University of Virginia brought up a good point. Do you want your parents to be sued? I think we have to let these students know, okay, if you're not going to care enough about the people in your organization and their safety, think about your future. Think about your earning potential. Think about your graduate degrees, because you pretty much throw it out the window. We still have boys from the Max Groover case asking us for 894 expungements, and we're not allowing it. And that's something that's going to have to follow them around. They have to be held accountable. We're taking this seriously. And we also tell these students, why do you think hazing cases are so prevalent in the media? You know, I've unfortunately had to prosecute high-profile cases, multiple homicides, that sort of thing, but they pale in comparison. The media coverage for hazing, those cases pale in comparison. Why? And I ask the students, why? Because you have everything to lose. You have everything to lose. Do you want to put your future on the line to these bad actors who have a power trip and want to abuse their power and take advantage of vulnerable people who want to fit in? Do you want to put your future on the line because of them? And that's the reality. I mean, and I think, I hate to use the word fear tactics, but for these 18 to 22-year-olds who have, the world is their oyster, they need to know that there are serious implications. Not only are we losing a beautiful young life, all the potential in the world, all the hopes and dreams of his family, not only are we losing that, but it's a ripple effect for everybody in the organization. And we should mourn their futures too. And they need to know that. So again, I don't mean to interject myself on this committee meeting, but I just felt like it's incumbent upon me. After prosecuting Max's case, I said, I never want to prosecute another hazing case. Unfortunately, learned about Caleb this February, and I have the knowledge, and I'm going to see it through. And we're going to hold people accountable. I don't wish to be in this position again, but here we are. And please, I'm asking you, listen. I look forward to your report in January. I really don't want another high-profile fatality in Louisiana. We have too many kids with too many bright futures to let this happen again. And I appreciate y'all letting me talk. If y'all have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Madam ADA, let me first just thank you on behalf of the task force. And I know Commissioner Reed spoke about the heaviness of today. But for you, I know you carry a lot of heaviness, having prosecuted one high-profile hazing case and now having to do another one. So we thank you for your service. I also know that you have stated that you've done some training and some conversations at LSU. Hopefully our other campuses that are located in Baton Rouge will take advantage of your knowledge and expertise as well. And Mr. Willis, hopefully you can use this as a model within the UL system to partner with our district attorneys throughout the system, and all of our systems can utilize that as a model. Are there any questions for our ADA from EBR Parish? If not, thank you so much.
Thank you all, and I appreciate the work you're doing, and if there's anything, any questions that y'all have, I can speak for myself and DA Hill or more. We want to help. We want to prevent this from happening, and what y'all are doing is very admirable, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pivot now. During our last meeting, because the conversation was so robust, we were able to have 3 of our systems present and make presentations. Unfortunately, the UL system, we ran out of time, and I want to make sure today, I know it's been a long day, but I want to make sure that the UL system has an opportunity to make their presentation. So I'm going to ask the UL system at this time to make their presentation, and then we'll go into questions. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable from.
Good afternoon, and thank you all, members of the task force. My name is Erica Colley. I am the Vice President of Student Affairs and Board Relations at the University of Louisiana System. And thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this very important work. Unfortunately, we did not get a chance to present at the last meeting, but that gave us a little more time to prepare. So it all worked out. Again, a privilege to be a part of this work. It's always concerning when we lose a student in death. One loss of life is one loss too many. And so we have to be in the trenches, we have to do the work, and we have to hold our administrators, our faculty members, all of our stakeholders accountable, because hazing prevention and hazing does not just fall on the shoulders of our student affairs practitioners. It's everybody's responsibility. If you touch a student, if you are part of the campus, you are responsible for reporting incidents of hazing. And so, as many have said earlier, 100% accountability. And my very own president, Dr. Gallo, said, and I echo his sentiments, 100% accountability at every level. So we will be engaging with all of our stakeholders, and if I can have a personal point of privilege, we have several of our student affairs leadership here in the audience who know that this work is very important, and so they stayed to be a part of this conversation if need be. And they're also spending the night in Baton Rouge so we can meet again tomorrow to continue these discussions, because we have to get to the root cause of these incidents. Why are they happening? I mean, I know what Dr. Kimbrough said, that it's difficult to eradicate. We may not ever eradicate it, but we need to do the work, and we need to be committed. So with that, I will turn things over to my partner, Ms. Alicia.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to go through our slides for our presentation for the UL system. So hazing incidents since 2018, we see that our system has 70 across our 9 distinct institutions, and the numbers are there. Our reporting process overview. All universities utilize multiple reporting channels, including online reporting systems, anonymous reporting options, direct contact with university officials, as well as the National Anti-Hazing Hotline. Since 2018, at our universities, more specifically, we see that Nichols had 1 organization suspended, Southeastern 1, and ULL 4. And organizations expelled and deactivated, 1 at Northwestern and 1 at Southeastern. Since 2018, some of the alternative sanctions used in lieu of complete expulsion or suspension were educational programs and risk management training for instances where there were no findings. These things were used. Disciplinary probation, loss of privileges, restitution and fines, and mediation and restorative measures. Regarding the reporting process, the hearing process, common elements across all 9 institutions, there is an investigation phase, formal notification of the allegations to the accused parties, their hearing options, either with a conduct officer or a formal hearing. The standard of evidence varies across the 9 institutions. Some use preponderance of evidence, while others use clear and convincing evidence. And then the appeals process, usually to the vice president or the president, stopping with the UL System Board. Grounds for appeals. Appeals are only possible if there were procedural errors or due process violations, new evidence comes into play, if there was contradictory evidence, disproportionate sanctions, or some level of bias or conflict of interest. Here you see our student organization involvement system-wide. We have 1,217 organizations, approximately 16,000 students involved, and the average participation rate of students across the campuses is at 32%. Our mandated training systems vary again across the institutions. We use a mix of Vector Solutions, Prevent Zone, or Alive Tech, Canvas, our learning management system, Third Millennium, or in-person workshops and presentations. These things vary from 60 to 120 minutes each, so some of these meet the 2-hour requirement, others we have to use in combination to meet the 2-hour requirement, but it is a hybrid of in-person and online presentations completed annually. And of course, the content includes hazing, but as Dr. Kimbrough alluded to, there is some room for alcohol education, refreshers, bystander interventions, and of course, implementing and including university policies and expectations. We monitor compliance digitally through attendance records, attestation forms, integration with student information systems. And the responsibility lies with our Student Affairs Office, Student Activities, Student Life, Student Leadership, Athletics, and Greek Life offices. Non-compliance. In those instances, the sanctions for organizations include inactive status until compliance is achieved, loss of privileges, inability to participate, registration holds and facility restrictions, temporary suspension of organizational activities. And for individual students, they may be removed from organization rosters, they suffer academic consequences, as well as have a meeting with their campus conduct officer. And I'll defer back to Dr. Calais for future considerations.
Sure, thank you, Ms. Mitchell. So some future considerations, and some of these are actually low-hanging fruit, some things we can implement soon, and some it may take a little while longer should we decide to do it. System-wide training improvements, standardized curriculum, develop uniform hazing prevention training at the state level, and I think maybe Dr. Smith is already working on that, so there we go.
The task force will help us with that.
That's right, asking you shall receive. A centralized platform, create a system-wide online training module similar to current power-based violence modules, enhance digital training, faculty and staff training different from the training that is provided to our students, because we know our faculty and staff members should, of course, be held to a higher level of responsibility. Policy and implementation recommendations, clear guidelines, provide explicit interpretation of new laws and compliance requirements. We at the University of Louisiana system, we always lean on our legal counsel to assist us with interpreting the new legislation, interpreting policies and such, and making sure that we at the system level have the appropriate policies in place to align with legislation. Funding support, secure ongoing legislative funding. So I'm looking at the legislators when I say that for educational requirements. So maybe you can consider that the next session. Cross-departmental coordination, establish hazing prevention task forces on campus. When Ms. Mitchell and I were speaking yesterday about our presentation, I said, why don't we have a hazing prevention task force at the system office? She's like, yeah, why don't we? I said, well, now we do, and so we will. We will, because it's important to keep this at the forefront of everybody's minds. A lot of times we talk about these things, months will pass by, we check a couple of boxes, and then we move on. And then another incident happens, and then we're back to square one. But we want to make sure that this stays on everybody's radars and that we continue to have these conversations and develop practices that will help our institutions, our students. And the last thing is unified reporting system. Create a single reporting system for all UL system institutions. And of course, training, delivery enhancements, peer education programs, and we talked a lot about this today. Our students are the best advocates, right, when it comes to hazing prevention and concerns that are related to students. Students don't want to listen to me. I'm so many generations removed from them, but they listen to each other. So one consideration would be to have peer education programs. Of course, have professional speakers. Dr. Kimbrough, he always does a great job. I enjoy listening to him, but exploring those avenues where we can get speakers to come and speak with our students concerning hazing. Registration integration, required training completion before class registration each academic year, and I feel the eyes from my counterparts in the audience, so we might not do that right away, we'll see. Data-driven assessment, implement metrics to evaluate training effectiveness. And let's see, compliance and enforcement. Consistent enforcement, again, clarify consequences for organizations with incomplete compliance. Appeal process standardization, uniform appeals procedures across all institutions, regular assessment, of course, annual review of program effectiveness and incident trends, and of course, best practice sharing, regular communication between institutions on successful strategies. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you very much, and let me thank your student affairs professionals from throughout the system that have stayed today. We really appreciate them being here. I do have a couple questions, and then I'll yield to any members of the task force. So let me ask about expulsions and suspensions. Is there a rubric that is used within the system to determine this offense is an automatic suspension, or this offense is an automatic expulsion, or is it more discretionary?
It's discretionary.
Yeah, and I think that's the case across systems, and you know, that's something that personally I'm gonna want us to kind of delve into a little bit more. Do we need to bring some uniformity to what warrants a suspension versus an expulsion? Because we can have an incident that happens on one campus and an identical incident can happen on a different campus, but the consequences are very, very different. So I think we may have to look at some uniformity. I'm going to give each of the systems some homework. I won't put you on the spot today, but if you can get this to me in writing, and I will disperse it to all of the members of the task force. I'd like to know in writing, if a fraternity or sorority chapter is expelled from a campus, can they come back at some point, even if it's under a different charter? And then let me ask, so you referenced expulsions and deactivations.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you kind of give us a little clarity to the difference in terms of what it means to be expelled versus deactivated, and timeline, et cetera?
Yes, sir. I'll ask Ms. Mitchell to expound upon that, if that's okay, since she does work in the Office of Student Advocacy and Accountability.
For expulsion, students are removed from campus, or that organization is removed from campus. It could be a student or the organization for a semester or a full year. If the chapter is deactivated, then they are not any longer on that campus at all. Now, whether or not they are able to come back will be our homework. But they are deactivated. Deactivated is they are no longer on campus.
Okay. And if a student is expelled, do they have the opportunity to come back at some point? Or is expulsion perpetual? Or is it indefinite?
Sometimes they are. If the expulsion is for a semester or a year, they are able to come back after that semester or that year.
Well,
You wanted to add something, Dr. Nicholas?
Oh, I was going to say, if it's a suspension, of course, they can return, but expulsions are perpetual for that particular institution. But I think Dr. Nicholas has, okay. Yeah, so expulsions for that institution are perpetual. They are not able to return, and it is also noted on their transcripts so that if they try to go to another institution, that will affect whether or not they are admitted to that institution.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from members of the task force? Well, you all, thank you so much for your very robust presentation. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for your great work system-wide. All right, at this time, I am going to ask Assistant Attorney General Julie Ralph with the Office of our Attorney General just to provide a brief review of evidentiary standards applicable to hazing laws in Louisiana, given the comments and questions at the last meeting. And then following that, I know we have Major Kilgore on the task force as well. So Major, I'm going to put you on the spot. Just if you have any thoughts or recommendations that you'd like to share after our Assistant AG.
Thank you. And just following up from the discussion about the hearings, when we're talking about a hearing where a student is facing a suspension of 10 or more days, or expulsion, same for an organization, the standard of proof changed in 2024 with Act 416. Prior to that, under Louisiana Revised Statute 173394, the standard was preponderance of the evidence. Now it's clear and convincing, which is a higher burden to meet. So I kind of did this chart here, and I thought it would be I thought it'd be good to kind of go through it with a practical illustration of a campus hearing involving hazing. So imagine that you have a university hearing panel that is considering whether a fraternity engaged in hazing. Scenario A would be prior to Act 416 when you had preponderance of the evidence. Let's say that the evidence shows that pledges were required to drink excessive amounts of alcohol, but the testimony is conflicting. A situation where you would have he said, she said. If the panel believed that it was 51% likely that hazing occurred, then that was enough to find responsibility under the preponderance standard. After 2024, when Act 416 changed that, now under the new law, that same panel must be highly persuaded. So they would need more than a bare tipping of the scales. So if you're looking at a scale under preponderance of the evidence, when you're looking at 51%, you're just barely tipping that scale. But under clear and convincing, they need more. It needs to be more than he said, she said. It needs to be more than just conflicting testimony. They're going to want to see multiple consistent witness statements, photos, videos, texts, social media posts, corroborating medical or police reports. So it's got to be something more substantial. The panel must leave the hearing with a firm conviction that hazing occurred. So under clear and convincing, if doubts remain because the evidence is shaky, or a situation where they've just got a he said, she said, then they cannot find responsibility. And I put beyond a reasonable doubt because obviously that's going to be the criminal standard that's going to have to be met. That is the highest standard where the scale is pretty much locked in place. It's a virtual certainty. But clear and convincing is the standard that you're going to be looking at in most of these hearings, and that scale's going to be heavily tipped if you're looking at that metaphor. So, you know, in short, under Act 416, a campus hearing officer is not going to be able to decide based on a slight probability. They're going to need strong, consistent, and corroborated proof that leaves them firmly convinced that hazing occurred. So, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions, members? Representative Stack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Ralph, so most administrative hearings occur at a licensure level for professions,
Correct.
just like the process this is going through. I think it's making it very difficult for institutions to leverage what they need to happen on a clear and convincing standard. Now, I say that knowing that passed the House without any nay votes. I think it probably passed the Senate the same way. But I think we may need to revisit that if we want our institutions to have the power and the force that they need to help regulate this. The clear and convincing standard is a criminal standard, isn't that right?
There are different, it is more of a criminal standard. I mean, the preponderance of evidence is the civil standard. The highest criminal standard is going to be the beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is just kind of splitting the baby.
Well, I don't know about that. When I look at people who get licenses, professional licenses, that their whole occupation can be taken away. They only need a preponderance of the evidence. And that's an administrative hearing. Now, if they've conducted something that is criminal, then I think you need to bring it to that level. But it's harder now under that bill for an institution to go after a bad actor if we don't bring it back down to preponderance of the evidence. Because I had a conversation after the last meeting where it's hard enough to get other people to tell you what's going on. And I think that's something we may need to revisit. We allow other administrative hearings on preponderance of the evidence. This is something that I think is needed. And look, we didn't see it at the time. None of us did.
Right.
So thank you.
Yes.
If I may add to what you just suggested, this is kind of my rally cry as well. Not only, the licensure boards can subpoena records. These committees cannot. We can't force anyone to participate or even talk to us. We can't subpoena any documents. We have to rely on what the police collect for us and what we're able to gather on our own happenstance. That just makes the heightened burden of proof impossible to meet. So the clear and convincing is a civil fraud standard, so which is kind of a hybrid of criminal and civil. But it's just impossible to meet when you don't have any law enforcement capabilities and you're dealing with students.
Well, and if I might add, one thing that has been brought up along the way is the value in anonymous reporting. And when you've got anonymous reporting, if you don't have credible witnesses that are willing to come forward and talk about it, you're never going to meet that at that level.
Chairman,
Yes.
this goes back to the statement that I made at our last meeting that's in the minutes about kind of restoring the power of the practitioners, right? That ultimately those who work with the students, those who have the trust of the students, those who are there, are not able to do anything. And by the time that we move into a full investigation on the legal end or on the criminal end, institutions' hands are tied. But it goes back to your comment also about expulsions, right? That if you step out there as an institution and issue a a sanction that's definitive, should be definitive, like expulsion, what ramifications are there for the institution that stepped out there and said, hey, we have expelled this group, that group, or whatever the case may have been, when even on the other side, things may still be in works, murky. And so I think it's a legal way of, in some cases, buying time that we really don't need to buy. If we're going to cut it at the root, if we're going to immediately respond, I agree with the sentiments that there has to be something that restores the power of the institutions, those who are able to see and hear and will probably get the information before external parties will.
Thank you. Well said.
I'm going to add one other thing. Dr. Anderson just brought up a good point, is that the current statute also places a financial burden on the universities if they get it wrong. So with this heightened standard, with difficulties with evidence, if it's brought to court and it's overturned, then we're liable for attorney's fees and perhaps some damages for that mistake. And the problem is we're dealing with clear and convincing is kind of a void of an evidentiary burden. It's not as easy as 50% plus one, or beyond a reasonable doubt, which is near certainty. It's this amorphous standard. So I'm afraid that a judge or a jury might find it very differently than us. And then it puts us on the hook. So what you have is practitioners in the student affairs office that don't want to put their neck out like that in these situations and expose the university or themselves to that obligation.
Well said. Vice Chair Boudreaux.
Yeah, I think those comments are well, and I'll go back to Rep. Stagney. Yeah, you didn't get anybody to vote against it because it wasn't explained that this is going to make it harder. I do know that we hear from time to time when these investigations go on. I mean, if you're in the fraternity, the sorority, the band, cheerleading, whatever, that's a fraternity with it's an organization within itself. So you're not going to get cooperation. Everybody goes silent. Everybody goes mum. Because you don't want to be the one to start that. So without a doubt, this is one, in my opinion, that we have to go back and correct. We know where the problem is. We know that there are limitations. And I think, if we're really going to do this some justice, then we got to make it at this level, we got to make it where we get that information and it starts there. But to make it us against them from day one, and you got so many things that are hanging. And to Dr. Anderson's point, I mean, buying time is very, very disruptive to the process, number one, and it just hangs over. It's a cloud that needs to go away. So without a doubt, this is one of those that we definitely need to go back and take a look at. And then the other question, the question, that was a comment. The question, were you able to see other states? I know we've been talking about we're going to have to take the lead on some of this because we live in it every day. Were you able to look at if any where does that fall with some of our other states, neighboring states, or anybody else when we looking at clear and convincing as compared to beyond a reasonable doubt or in that category? Were you able to look at that? No.
I did not, but that would be really interesting, and I'll be glad to look at that.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to have to do our due diligence also within the legislative process because, like I said, in some areas we want to lead, in some other areas we want to follow. And sometimes when we think it's good, other people don't think it's good. But when we have deaths, it's not good. So yeah, if we can start off looking and see, and that'll hopefully help some of the legislators who, like us, who voted for this thinking it was going to be better. But we've heard quite clearly that at the university level, it's not working now. It's not going to work then. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I think we all know, sometimes we pass really great laws as legislators, and sometimes we have to go back and revisit them and tweak them a little bit. And this is probably one where we're going to have to go back to the table, working in partnership with our AG's office, but ensuring that our higher education counterparts, professionals, are also at the table as well if we're going to get this right. So thank you all. All right. Thank you, Madam Assistant AG. Really appreciate you. Major Kilgore, any just comments or thoughts from State Police.
Yes, thank you. So, I've been taking a lot of notes and, from the last two meetings, and a lot of the questions that I've had have been answered, and what I see is these universities and colleges, y'all are amazing. What y'all are doing is absolutely amazing, what y'all are putting in place, because at the beginning of this, I was like, well, are they doing anything? And the answer is yes. What y'all are doing is phenomenal. So some of the comments that I have, I spoke today to the chief of police from McNeese, and somebody else made a comment today about it. So the law enforcement agencies, state, local, your municipalities, we all need to help these universities. Some of them have large police departments. Some of them have very small ones like McNeese. I think it's very important that we all get together and meet and find out how we can all help, because like has been said several times, hazing is not just isolated to the campus. It also occurs off campus. So we need to make sure that we all understand what's going on, understand the process, and help each other out. So that I've already started drafting my email to Colonel Hodges saying, okay, we need to get on the forefront of this. And we really need to help some of these smaller universities out where we can help them out. So that is something that I'm actively working on now. Couple of questions, I don't even know if they can be answered or not. We talked about today the Dr. Kimbrough called them the Peter Pans, the ones that, 30-year-olds, 28 years olds. Is there a reason they can't be kept off of campus? I don't know if that's even doable. I'm probably asking a question that can't be answered right now. Another question is these organizations that are expelled, suspended, or what have you, and they open up, I guess, a satellite chapter off campus. Is there something that can be done to prevent that, or is that can they not be touched? So that's questions that I have that I would that I think could help the process, but I know that those may not be doable. Something that I think just about everybody has brought up that I think is brilliant and needs to occur is we've got to get this into the middle and the high schools. We have to, because we're sending babies to college. I mean, these kids are just they're still babies, and they're being influenced by the 23, 24-year-olds. They're 17 years old, 18 years old. We need to try and get them ahead of time, and I don't know if that's something that can be done through legislation, that we can recommend the very same things that we're recommending at the campuses. Hey, everybody, every student, every year needs to go through this hazing. We need to talk about it. We need to have discussions, even if it's getting the campuses involved, whether it's the fraternities, sororities, maybe sending people to these high schools or middle schools to talk about, or the SGAs, somebody that they can relate to. We have to start there to start turning the tide, to start making a difference. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Major. One thing, Madam Commissioner, that I'd like us to do for our next meeting, I'm going to reach out to Tavares Walker myself, who is the Executive Director of Bessie, and just ask him to sit in our next task force meeting. But repeatedly, K-12 keeps coming up, and so I want to try to start that partnership as soon as possible. So if we think it makes sense from somebody from Board of Education to be present, let's try to do that. Thank you very much. At this time, members, we're nearing the end of our meeting, but I am going to ask Dr. Smith just to present a summary of the recommendations that have been provided by the system and task force members from the first meeting. And then members, I'm going to ask you to chime in just to ensure we're on the right track, or if you have anything that you'd like to add. And I'm also going to ask task force members to please weigh in as we look to our next meeting in November, things that you would like to see on the agenda and for us to focus on. So Dr. Smith.
One of the things that initially stood out when we've had conversations with the systems between meetings, before meetings, after meetings, the meeting after the meeting, all of those, is that some type of standardized training. One, there we know that organizations have their own branded training, but there needs to be some base level of knowledge for what that means in Louisiana. So I understand your organization may make you take an hour, or you're gonna end up with 3 because Louisiana requires 2 additional hours. So you cannot be overtrained. And I think, talking with some of the student affairs professionals in the room, I heard several people today, well, no, it's not really a bad idea to talk about every year, every student, every training. That was one of the things that came up at the meeting, that the frequency of which we do the training, because we never know when a student is going to decide to become a part of an organization. So not just waiting until they join it. Another piece was some financial assistance from the systems for implementing wide-scale hazing prevention training on their campuses, supporting those things. And I think that would particularly become important if we're going to utilize students to be peer educators and peer leaders on that front. Students like swag, they like messaging, they like branding, and they understand how to do that well. Utilizing campus departments, having it be part of curriculum infusions where we're utilizing media departments or mass communications departments, having those student-led and student-driven campaigns. Dr. Kelly pointed out, like, we're pretty nice people, but they think we're old. So having student-led, student-driven campaigns, but allowing the students to shape what those voices look like. I've heard from so many people in the room that they were just amazed by the students that went up to the podium today to share, to hear the passion that they have in getting more student involvement. So another piece that we're looking at with the standardized training, standardized reporting, talking with the systems to update the reporting format. When the law was initially passed, it was designed to be reported on the form that was provided by the Board of Regents. One of those things at the time, not all of our institutions or systems had access to Maxient. It's a little bit of a pricier software, but it is well worth it. But at this point, 8 years later down the line, all of our institutions have access to Maxient. And so the form is duplicative for what they report to Maxient. And I'll give credit to our systems. They do both forms. They do their Maxient report and they put it on the Board of Regents forms. It's the exact same information. But Maxient goes a little bit faster and it transmits to their campus police, their PD, and it keeps an electronic record of it. So one will look at streamlining those reporting, that looking at what the law says about it being the form that the Board of Regents provided, or what is the language, or something similar, giving them the flexibility to report faster, not having to slow down when it comes to how we report that, the reporting timing for that. And so those were 2 of the big recommendations that our institutions had. And also, they also like the idea of the simulated training. And I think I saw several light bulbs went out today when Dr. Steve Velclamp talked about the 70% participation, the 30% knowledge, to making sure that it's effective, getting students involved in smaller, more intimate trainings, instead of having 200 of y'all in the room come in, sign, like you said, scan your ID and walk out. Making sure it's a more intimate, that you can have the conversation. You can have students not only just animated going through scenarios, but they can role play in those rooms. What do you do in this situation? Can you identify coercive or hazing behaviors in this scenario that you're playing out? Some of those more hands-on experience to deepen their learning of that process.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Any comments, questions, or recommendations for any agenda items for the next meeting? Yes, ma'am.
I think from a funding standpoint, we need to make sure that the funding is used for this purpose. We get a lot of money that is kind of said to be used for things, but we're not able to use, like, our colleges get creative with their accounting, I guess you could say. And so it needs to be clear that if it is funding, that it is for this purpose, and there is a line item in the budget and there's a report associated with it, because we don't want to run into a situation where we have money but it is not being spent for its purpose.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, only observation, I will continue to reiterate, well, 2 things, and I want us to, I know it's been said repeatedly today that hazing will likely never be eradicated. But I want us to be of the mindset that certain behavior we can eradicate. Bodily injury, death, we can eradicate that. I really believe that. There's certain behavior in America from years ago we thought would never be eradicated, but it did, okay? And so I want us to get of the mindset that there are just certain behavior we can eradicate and we will eradicate. And then number 2, I do think as we talk about hazing, and we definitely want to be proactive, but one training at the beginning of the semester is not enough. And what was said earlier, ongoing conversations, ongoing simulations, ongoing PSAs, we have to talk about it repeatedly, repetitively. They can't just be a one and done. So with that, thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you, task force members. Ladies and gentlemen, our next task force meeting will be November 3rd, 1 o'clock p.m. to 3 p.m. Going to ask that you be ready to really roll up your sleeves, because we're going to have to get into the nitty-gritty of really doing some important work as we work toward our report. National Hazing Prevention Week will be recognized September 22nd through the 26th, and you can find out more information by scanning the QR code on the screen. Public comment, is there any member of the audience that would like to make public comments, or do we have any online comments?
We do not have any online.
No online?
And none in the room.
Okay, no public comment. If that, seeing no further business, Task Force Member Willis moves that we adjourn, second by Dr. Anderson. Is there any objection? Without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you, members.